broke no law. You carried your own cash through an airport. By the gate, it was gone. A retired railroad worker near Pittsburgh kept his life savings in cash, about $82,000. His daughter carried it through an airport to put it in the bank for him. Federal agents took every bill and never charged anyone with a crime. It happened to a man named Terry Rolin. It could happen with money that is entirely your own. It is late August 2019 at Pittsburgh International Airport. A woman named Rebecca Brown walks toward her gate with a carry-on over her shoulder, running an errand for her father. A TSA X-ray machine sees something dense in her bag and stops her. When a screener opens the bag, there is no weapon inside, only cash, bundled in bank bands, thousands of dollars of it. To understand how that cash ended up in her bag, back up a few miles to a small house near Pittsburgh where her father had packed it that morning. His name is Terry Rolin. He is about 79, a retired railroad worker, and for most of his life, he did not trust banks. He had lived through decades when a bank could feel less safe than a coffee can, the kind of caution you might recognize in your own parents. So he kept his money where he could count it himself. By that summer, it came to roughly $82,000 in bills. By his family's account, it was everything he had, the whole of a working life, counted by hand and kept at home. Then came an ordinary problem, the kind you might face with your own aging parent. Cash in a house can be lost or burned or stolen, and Terry was getting older. So the family made a plain decision. Rebecca, who lives in another state, would carry the money home, open a joint bank account, and use it to manage his finances and pay for what he was going to need. The whole plan was to deposit it and protect it. And carrying that cash was completely legal. On a domestic flight, there is no limit on how much money you can bring, and nothing you are required to declare. Under federal law, the only time you must report cash is when you carry more than $10,000 across a national border, not a state line, an international border. Rebecca was flying from one American city to another, well within every rule that applied to her. The next time you fly with cash, for a car, a house deposit, a gift to family, the same rule protects you. It is your money, and no law says you owe anyone an explanation for carrying it. But cash tends to summon people. A Pennsylvania state trooper came to the checkpoint, and then a federal agent from the Drug Enforcement Administration, identified in the court filings only by a first name. They questioned Rebecca at the gate while strangers counted her father's savings into stacks of $100 bands. They called Terry, half asleep back in Pittsburgh, and asked him about the money too. Afterward, they said the two accounts did not match, so they took it. The entire $82,000, seized on the spot and carried away in an envelope. They found no drugs. They made no arrest. Neither Terry nor Rebecca was charged with any crime, then or later. His life savings were gone in a single afternoon, and the money was simply gone. Which leaves one question. If there was no crime, how was any of this legal? The answer is not one agent having a bad afternoon. It is a system Congress built, and one its critics say runs largely on its own incentives. What happened to Terry Rolin has a name. It is called civil asset forfeiture, and it is one of the strangest powers the government holds. Most people never learn it exists. It begins with a legal move that sounds like a typo. In an ordinary criminal case, the government charges a person. In civil forfeiture, the government sues the property itself. The money becomes the defendant. That is why these cases carry captions that read like a joke but are not. Something like, the United States versus a pile of cash. Lawyers call it an action in rem, against the thing. Because the case is against the money and not against you, the government does not have to charge you, or convict you, or even say out loud that you did anything wrong. For a long time, that left owners in an almost impossible spot. Once the government seized your property, the burden was on you to prove your own money was innocent. In the year 2000, Congress changed that with the Civil Asset Forfeiture Reform Act, Kafra. On paper, it flipped the scale, so now the government has to prove the property is forfeitable, but read the fine print. The standard is only a preponderance of the evidence, more likely than not. That is the bar your own savings would be judged by, and it sits far below the beyond a reasonable doubt. A prosecutor needs to put someone in prison. In plain terms, the government does not have to be sure your money is dirty. It only has to convince a judge that it is more likely dirty than not. Most people never fight at all. The cash they lost is worth less than the lawyer it would take to get it back, so they let it go. So why would an agency reach for this when there is no crime to prosecute? Follow the money. Under a federal program called equitable-sharing, rooted in a 1984 crime law, the agency that seizes the cash can keep or share the proceeds. It does not vanish into the treasury. It can flow straight back to the office that took it, so the office that emptied your bag can spend what it found there. The Institute for Justice, the public interest law firm at the center of this story, argues that this builds a financial incentive to seize and a way around stricter state laws, since federal sharing can pay out even where a state would say no. They are an advocate here, not a referee, so weigh it as one side. But the loop they describe is not a theory. Seize the cash, keep the proceeds, and the incentive is written into the structure itself. Put those two pieces together, a lawsuit against your money on a more likely than not standard, and an agency that keeps what it takes, and you have a machine with a motive to run. And it runs at a scale most people never imagine. Not a few hundred cases, but tens of thousands. Terry Rolin's case was not rare. Pull back from that one checkpoint, and the same scene repeats across the country. In 2016, a USA Today investigation, later cited in the coverage of Terry's own case, reported that between 2006 and 2015, the DEA seized more than $209 million from over 5,000 travelers across 15 major American airports. And Rebecca was far from alone at her own gate. At Pittsburgh, hundreds of travelers were stopped and separated from their cash over just a few years. Picture one of them. A traveler with a boarding pass folded into a shirt pocket and a connection to catch, standing at a table, watching a stranger zip his own money into an evidence bag, being told as it happened that he could hire a lawyer if he ever wanted it back. By the time his flight boarded, the cash was sealed in a bag with a case number, and he was left holding a receipt for money that had been his an hour before. Those individual stories add up. In 2017, the Justice Department's own Office of Inspector General looked at the DEA's cash seizures. Over roughly a decade, it reported, the agency had seized more than $3.2 billion in cash across about 65,000 seizures, none of it connected to a criminal charge. The report was careful with the word. This money was seized, not forfeited, taken first, with the question of guilt left for later, if it came at all. And behind each of those seizures is a household. When Rebecca later described what losing the money did to her father, she did not talk about the law. She talked about his teeth. In a public statement, she said he had to put off dental work he badly needed, which left him in pain for months, and that he could not make repairs his truck needed. That is what a forfeiture looks like from the inside. An old man waiting in pain over money the government held and never charged him about. By the Institute for Justice's own accounting, states and the federal government together have taken at least $68.8 billion through forfeiture since the year 2000. The group is quick to say that number is probably too low because the reporting is so patchy, a floor, not a ceiling. And this is not history. Reporting in late 2025 described new airport seizures, still happening, still following the same pattern. In one, agents at a Texas airport stopped a traveler and took hundreds of thousands of dollars, saying they smelled marijuana. None was found. No charges followed. In another, the government took a six-figure sum from a traveler, then settled by handing back a portion and keeping the rest. In that second case, no one ever showed the money was drug money. No one proved it was anything but his. Getting even part of it back still cost him lawyers, filings, and months of his life, and in the end, the government simply kept a share. Not because it had won, but because fighting to the finish is slow and expensive, and most people cannot outlast it. Settlements like that rarely make the news, and a judge almost never gets to say who was right. So when Terry's family decided to fight, they were not only fighting for their own savings, they were pulling a thread that ran through the whole system. Thousands of travelers, billions of dollars, almost none of it ever tied to a crime. And they were not pulling it alone. It started with a phone call to the Institute for Justice, the firm that had spent years challenging exactly this kind of seizure. In early 2020, they filed a federal class action in a Pennsylvania court, Brown versus the Transportation Security Administration. This time, the money was not the defendant. The traveler was the plaintiff, and the target was not one seizure but the whole practice. First, though, a court had to agree to even hear it. The threshold question that, for anyone this happens to, decides whether you ever see your own money again. The suit made 3 arguments. First, that the TSA had overstepped its authority. The law that lets it screen your bag is about weapons, explosives, and threats to a flight, not cash. Second, that holding travelers and their money without reasonable suspicion violated the Fourth Amendment. Third, that the DEA was seizing cash of $5,000 or more without probable cause, simply because the money was there to take. To see why getting money back is so hard, look at what the process demands. Under CAFRA, an owner has only a narrow window to file a claim, which forces the government to either bring a real case or let the property go. Miss the deadline or file the wrong form, and the money can be forfeited administratively without a judge ever looking at it. Even when you do everything right, the process can drag on for a year or more, with your cash sitting in a government account the whole time. For a family trying to pay for an aging parent's care, that year is not a technicality. It is care that does not happen. It is the surgery pushed back, the roof left unfixed, a month of bills paid late, all while the paperwork grinds on and the money sits somewhere you cannot reach. Then, within weeks of the filing, after the story reached the national press, the DEA gave it all back. The full savings returned in early 2020. It offered no reason for taking the money and no reason for returning it. It never argued in court that Terry was a drug dealer. It did not defend the seizure at all. It just handed the money back. For Rebecca and her father, the money coming back was not a triumph so much as a plain relief. The joint account could finally open, the bills could be paid, and a plan frozen for months could start moving again. But relief for one family was not an answer for the thousands who never get a call from a law firm. Terry's lawyers did not drop the case because giving one man his savings back does nothing for the next 5,000 travelers. So the class action pressed on. The government moved to have it thrown out, and according to court records, a federal court let the core of the case proceed. No one had won anything yet, but a court had agreed to ask, out loud, whether any of this was constitutional. Then, according to reporting on the litigation, in 2022 the DEA reached a settlement in that class action, agreeing to a policy about when it may seize travelers' cash. The exact terms are worth reading directly rather than overstating. And the settlement did not end the fight. The case against the TSA, the agency that flagged the money in the first place, kept going. So a father had his savings back. One claim was settled, and the case had survived a motion to dismiss. One program was beginning to change course. The checkpoints, though, were still open, and the reckoning was only just reaching the agencies that ran them. Stand for a moment where those travelers stood. In practice, a so-called consensual encounter could mean an agent stepping between you and your gate, asking where you were going and how much money you were carrying. At the exact moment saying no feels impossible. You are free to walk away, in theory. In a crowded terminal, with a flight to catch and an agent standing over your open bag, almost no one does. You answer the questions. You let them look. You tell yourself that cooperating is the fastest way to make your flight. And that instinct is exactly what the encounter is built to use. That pressure eventually reached the top. According to reporting, in late 2024, the Justice Department told the DEA to suspend those encounters at transportation hubs after an internal watchdog flagged serious constitutional risks. Then, in early 2025, the DEA shut down its airport cash operation altogether, the program that had been stopping travelers like Rebecca. And the program's own numbers show why it was hard to defend. Over about 3 years, by the numbers reported, it had seized roughly $22 million and produced 57 arrests. A great deal of cash, very few criminal cases, which was exactly what Terry's lawyers had been saying all along. That gap, millions taken against a handful of arrests, is what finally drew scrutiny. A tool sold to the public as a weapon against drug cartels was, at that airport, mostly a way to take cash from travelers who were never charged with anything. Asked to show what it had actually caught, the people running it did not have much of an answer. For a program pitched as frontline drug enforcement, that was a hard silence to explain. But shutting one program is not the same as ending the practice. There was the traveler whose six-figure savings were taken and only partly returned. His case did not close when the DEA's program did. He was still filing, still waiting, still paying lawyers to argue over money no one had ever tied to a crime. For people like him, nothing about the checkpoint had changed. The program that had taken his money was gone. The practice that could take yours was not. And it was not only that one man. Reporting through 2025 described other federal agencies, beside the Department of Homeland Security, still stopping travelers and seizing their cash at airports. The badge on the jacket had changed. The travelers still had to sue to get legal money back. A hunch, a seizure, and an owner left to fight for what was already theirs. And Terry's own lawsuit was not finished. Through 2025 and into 2026, the class action against the TSA was still alive, motions stacking on both sides, a court still weighing whether the practice had ever been lawful, while the DEA argued that ending its program made its part of the case moot. The constitutional question sat where it had started, open. Which brings you back to where Terry started. A retired railroad worker near Pittsburgh, who trusted his own home more than a bank, watched his life savings vanish at an airport over a story a stranger did not believe. He was never a criminal. He got his money back only because a law firm took his call, and the noise grew too loud to ignore. The system that took it is still standing, still funded in part by the very cash it seizes, and it can still reach money that is completely, provably yours. Your cash is legal to carry, and that has never been enough to keep it safe. But this story did not end in defeat. Terry Rolin's savings came home. One airport program was shut down, and its own scorecard showed it took far more cash than it ever turned into arrests. That win was real. The larger case against the TSA is still being decided, and we will follow it into the next episode. If you want to know how far this can go, stay with the series, because next we follow the same machine into another life. It turned upside down, ordinary people, and the systems that can take everything, without ever calling it a crime.